Welcome to Channel's Business Global with me, Juliana Olayinka, from our studios here in London. Over the next half an hour, we'll be looking beyond the business headlines by giving you in-depth perspective on the stories that are affecting all of us. Coming up on today's show, over 100 people, including 13 American troops, have been killed in 2 suicide bombings at Kabul airport, an incident the Pentagon has described as heinous and complex. After 2 decades, $2 trillion and thousands of lives lost, in just a few days, the Western occupation of Afghanistan will be over. The withdrawal process has created the world's most disturbing humanitarian crisis. I'll be discussing all the fallout with our business correspondent Simon Pusey and Afghan medical scientist Hajir Azam. And the Africa-Singapore Business Forum has taken place this week with an aim to showcase more investment opportunities for business leaders keen to enter growing markets on the continent. Jean Neng, the Regional Director for West and Central Africa at Enterprise Singapore, will be joining me from Accra to discuss some of the key moments from the event. Then later, Lindaway McLarley, the CEO of African Teen Geeks, will be joining me from Johannesburg to discuss her groundbreaking initiative with UNICEF that will help close the digital education gap in South Africa. Now to our main story. Over 100 people, including 13 American troops, were killed in 2 suicide bombings at Kabul airport. Despite President Joe Biden's continued defense of his withdrawal decision, in the end, yesterday marked the deadliest day for the American military in a decade. The real concern for Britain is that more clouds may lie ahead. The episode is considered a rude awakening and a sober moment of reassessment for Prime Minister Boris Johnson's Global Britain agenda. Intense criticism has been levelled at his government from across the political spectrum for its failure to control the deadly chaos still unfolding in Taliban-controlled Kabul.
I can confirm that there's been a barbaric terrorist attack, what looks like a series of attacks in Kabul on the airport, on the crowds at the airport, in which members of the US military very sadly have lost their lives, and many Afghan casualties as well. And we extend our condolences both to the United States of America and to the people of Afghanistan. And I want to stress that this threat of a terrorist attack is one of the constraints that we've been operating under in Operation Pitting, in the big extraction that's been going on, and we've been ready for it, we've been prepared for it, and I want to stress that we're going to continue with that operation, and we're now coming towards the end of it, to the very end of it, in any event, and we've already extracted the overwhelming majority of those under both the schemes, the eligible persons, the UK persons, UK nationals, plus the Afghans, the interpreters, and others. And it's been a totally phenomenal effort by the UK. There's been nothing like it for decades and decades. But clearly, what this attack shows is the importance of continuing that work in as fast and as efficient a manner as possible in the hours that remain to us, and that's what we're going to do.
Yes, at about 4:30 this morning, we authorised the closure of the Barons Hotel, that is our processing centre, and brought across the British, obviously, government officials that were working there, our military, and indeed the people that were inside it for processing. So that is now closed. The Abbey Gate is currently closed and will remain so. And indeed, we are now processing approximately the last 1,000 people on the inside of the airfield, and we will fly them out today. That's effectively where we start to move to the next stage, which is the evacuation of our 1,000 troops.
Well, for more on this, I'm now being joined by our business correspondent, Simon Pusey. Simon, what a devastating 24 hours. Your assessment on what's been taking place at the airport?
Yeah, well, I think what a lot of people are saying is, how did this happen when there was so much warning that it was going to happen? Yesterday, around lunchtime, we were talking about how lots of Western countries had come out and said there's a very imminent threat of an attack at the airport. I think the point is that obviously there's a ticking clock for these countries to get their people out, and for Afghanis to leave because of this deal that's been done with the Taliban, for everyone to have left by the 31st of August. So they couldn't have sort of paused things for a couple of hours but it's just the inevitability of it, which is so tragic, because yeah, everyone knew there was going to be an attack. There was an attack. At least 90 people dead, probably many more. 150 people injured, and this just really sets up more terrorist attacks for the future, because you've got 90 families who've lost people, and they're going to be incredibly angry. This group is called ISK. It's linked to ISIS, and again, the thing that's sort of mind-blowing here is that they're against the Taliban. They think the Taliban are too moderate, so they are, really hard-line radical Islamists. So I think in terms of the West, it's another really, really tragic moment, because we've sown these seeds. This is pretty much the fault of the US and UK foreign policy. UK Defence Minister Ben Wallace saying they've just got hours left now to get UK people linked to the UK and Afghans who helped UK forces out of Afghanistan. But he said the sad fact is that not everyone will get out. So again, in the future, we're probably going to see horrible tales and horrible stories of people being kidnapped in Afghanistan for money. And this is probably going to keep coming. There are probably going to be more attacks. And it's really, really tragic that, if it wasn't bad enough that we're leaving Afghanistan and the Taliban have completely taken over the country and all of the repercussions that has for women and children, well, we're now seeing, many more lives being lost, and probably more before the 31st of August. So I think, how many more attacks will there be? What other things are we going to see? Obviously the Taliban have said various things that they've changed over the last 20 years. I'm sure that's not quite going to be the case, and we're going to see that appearing. 20 years ago, there was not social media, there were not camera phones. We're going to see these things now a lot more clearly, I think. The US also nearing the final stages of their evacuations. Joe Biden saying that it's the 31st, they'll be all out by then. But of course, there's going to be interpreters, there's going to be Afghans who are there, who helped UK forces, who helped the former government, that are obviously not going to get out. And I think a lot of them are thinking, what's going to happen to me? What's going to happen to my family? So a really tragic few hours, as you say. Joe Biden saying that they're going to hunt down this group that killed 13 US servicemen. But again, it's just a never-ending circle, isn't it? A never-ending cycle. So I think really, really tragic, and I fear we're going to see more things like we saw in terms of these big attacks.
Absolutely, just the beginning, isn't it? Thank you, Simon. Afghanistan is now teetering on a full-blown economic and humanitarian crisis. Prior to these recent events, the country was already facing the triple threat of COVID-19, conflict and drought. Key divisions of the United Nations have warned that vital supplies to the country will run out within days, with over 18 million people already in need of humanitarian assistance to survive. Both the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund have halted further economic assistance for the country until the legitimacy of the Taliban-led government has been defined. Well, for more on this, I'm now being joined by medical scientist Hajir Azam, whose family is still living in Afghanistan. Hajir Azam, thank you so much for joining me on Channels Business Global, especially at this short notice. Let's just start, first of all, with your thoughts and feelings surrounding the pretty awful events that have taken place at Kabul airport over the past 24 hours.
Thank you for having me. Yes, it's quite tragic, especially last night with the bombs going off. It was tragic even before that, to see all the scenes of desperate Afghans trying to leave the country with the fear of Taliban overtaking the country. But it's even more shocking and painful to actually have casualties as a result of something that even Taliban didn't anticipate. So it's just tragic, and there's a lot of life loss, which was so unpredictable. These people were meant to have a future, a bright future somewhere else, but they just, it wasn't meant to be, I guess.
I know it's a dreadful situation, and I know you do, Hajir, have relatives on the ground. Can we, for a second, just move away from the geopolitical discourse? Because, of course, if you're in the global north or in the UK, like where we are, that's all the media are talking about. But, these are human beings, and there is a fast evolving humanitarian crisis taking place at the moment. It's so difficult to know what parts of the media to believe. But having spoken to relatives on the ground, how are they coping? Is aid getting through? Are they getting the support that they need?
So what we're getting is, we're mainly, we have relatives in the south of Afghanistan, and after the overtake of Taliban, they haven't reported any major changes in terms of any crisis happening. So when the takeover was happening, that was quite a stressful time for everybody, as it is like in any situation when the power's changing. There's always these struggles, but people were quite scared and very apprehensive at that time. But after the overtake took place, it was people were told to go back to their jobs, and people who fled from their houses to go into a safer place because of all what was going on at the time, they were told to go back to their houses. So I've had relatives who moved in with other relatives who thought they were much safer in different areas, who were told to go back because their homes were now safe, and they have gone back and they're still in their jobs. So I'm not sensing anything that's changed dramatically. I know the focus is on the airport, and it comes across as if that chaos is happening elsewhere in the country, which, in every street in Afghanistan. But I don't think that's the case. I'm not trying to dampen down like what's happening in the airport, but I am just hearing from our own relatives that I don't think there's anyone who has lost their jobs, which is the main thing for them. That's what happens in a power overtake, that you lose your house, you lose your job, and those are the two things that they've kept. So that's got to be something positive.
Absolutely. So Hajir, your relatives are in southern Afghanistan. Where exactly is that in relation to Kabul?
So it's in Kandahar, which is a very stronghold of Taliban from a long time. So they've been it's been a rough place since the Americans came in about 20 years ago. There's always been conflict. It hasn't been very stable, especially the outskirts of it. And people report that since the overtook of Taliban, the security is a lot better. So obviously they, if they were the cause of the insecurity, now they're in power. So they're, the people are seeing a lot more calm scenes. So people feel that they're a lot more protected. So they can, they're going about their business just as normal.
And finally, Hajir, I've got to ask you about women. Is it fair to say that women's rights are under threat under a Taliban regime?
It's hard to tell at the moment how it's going to be like, because they haven't formed their government yet. We're yet to hear how many women would be involved in the government, or how, so at the moment what we're hearing is that people can go on about their jobs as normal. So even women are going back to their jobs, and also the girls are going to school. Like I said, I don't know what will the future hold after they announce the government and what the plan would be. But for now, I think Taliban have learnt from their mistakes, and I'm hoping they've learnt from their mistakes of the past, that otherwise the international community, I don't think they will stand by them if they went back to the ways that they were before the 20 years ago. So I think people try to criticize more than try to work on what the solution could be. So if you want the women's rights, rather than criticizing and saying that I don't think they've changed, I don't think they'll do any better, I think they're trying to prove that they have changed by keeping the girls going to school, by keeping most women going back to their work. And I think from the outside of the country, I think the pressure that we can put on our governments is that in order for any further fundings, for these things to happen, there needs to be, accountability for, how are the women's rights doing.
Absolutely. Well, Hajir Azam, it's been such a pleasure speaking to you, medical scientist with relatives in southern Afghanistan, Kandahar. Thank you so much for joining me on Channel's Business Global. Thank you, Hajir. Coming up on Channel's Business Global, I'll be discussing the key themes from the Africa-Singapore Business Forum with Jean Neng, the Regional Director for West and Central Africa at Enterprise Singapore in Accra. And Lindaway Matlali, the CEO of African Teen Geeks, will be joining me from Johannesburg to discuss her groundbreaking initiative with UNICEF that will help close the digital education gap in South Africa. See you after the break. Welcome back to Channel's Business Global with me, Juliana Olayinka, from our studios here in London. In a few minutes, I'll be speaking with Jean Neng from Enterprise Singapore and Lindaway Matlali, the CEO of African Teen Geeks. But before then, here's some company news for you. PayPal has become one of the largest companies trading in the UK to embrace the digital currency market. The American online payment platform announced that it would allow its British customers to buy, hold and sell digital currencies commencing this week. PayPal's crypto feature first launched in America in the fourth quarter of 2020, giving users the ability to trade Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, Ethereum or Litecoin with as little as $1. While central banks across the world are exploring the potential of launching their own digital currencies, in June, Britain's FCA banned Binance, the world's largest crypto exchange, for its failure to meet money laundering requirements. McDonald's ran out of milkshakes in all of its UK restaurants this week amid a nationwide shortage. The fast food chain has been unable to sell any bottled drinks at its 1,250 outlets in England, Scotland and Wales. A shortage of lorry drivers due to new EU immigration rules and COVID restrictions is thought to be behind the supply problem. Last week, Nando's was forced to shut around 50 restaurants due to a shortage of chicken, and KFC has also faced similar issues. China's ride-hailing platform Didi has reportedly called off plans to launch in continental Europe. Beijing authorities have cracked down on the firm in recent months amid concerns about user data leaving China. A spokesperson for the company said as soon as they have more news on additional markets, they look forward to sharing it. Now to our next story. The Africa-Singapore Business Forum has taken place this week with an aim to showcase more investment opportunities for business leaders keen to enter growing markets on the continent. Over the last 5 years, the number of projects by Singapore companies in Africa have doubled. Well, for more on this, I'm now being joined by Jean Neng, the Regional Director for West and Central Africa at Enterprise Singapore. She joins me from Accra. Jean, the African-Singapore Business Forum has had some major players participate this week. It's a massive event, but obviously, for obvious reasons, this year it's taken place under very different circumstances. The way the world does business has changed. Can you tell us about some of the key themes and important sectors that have topped the bill this week?
Yes, so thank you, Juliana. So basically, just to give a bit of a context, trade between Singapore and Africa has actually grown over the last 5 years. CAGR is about plus 7.6%. Singapore is one of the top 10 investors into Africa. And likewise, Nigeria and Ghana focus very highly on our trading partners. So this year, the Africa-Singapore Business Forum is fully virtual. It's free. It's one of the largest attendance that we've seen so far. Over 2,000 attendees have been on the platform over the last 2 days, engaged in the plenary program as well as in our respective other partner events. And the key segments to actually take away from the forum would include basically the in-conversation session between our Senior Minister Taman and the President of AFDB, Dr. Adesina, who was basically discussing, Africa leapfrogging ahead of many different countries in the area of innovation and sustainability. Panel discussions were focused around infrastructure development, again with a sustainability angle for planning and construction. There were also panels in manufacturing in Africa, especially with the Africa Continental Free Trade Area coming to implementation. So many bars around there, and digitalization is huge. It was one of the other segments that was spoken about for Africa.
Absolutely, it really is huge, especially lots of pledges for deals too. When consumers think of Africa-Asia trade, clearly China dominates. The sentiment, what is it about Singapore that will pull prospective business partners? What are the key selling points?
Well, I would guess that, I mean, and when naturally Asia, when people think of Asia, China is huge. But when people think of Singapore, we engender the trust. The brand of trust actually comes with our reputation. So Singapore firms doing business in Africa have brought that through in their various partnerships that we have seen. We also open the doors. We are very willing to share our growth journey in many different sectors with our African partners. And likewise, I mean, African firms looking to expand into Asia, we welcome you. I mean, it's a win-win situation when you work with Singapore companies, because naturally we open the doors to, you know, diversifying your business sources and also, you know, new business coming into Southeast Asia. So look to Singapore and work with Singapore companies as a gateway to Southeast Asia at the end of the day.
Absolutely. I know Enterprise Singapore have a massive footprint on the continent. I'm speaking to you in Accra. When will I be speaking to a member of your team in Lagos or any other big African city?
Yes. For now, I mean, all our 3 offices on the ground for Sub-Saharan Africa, regional offices. I don't deny Nigeria needs a market office by itself because of how huge its potential is, and the market, naturally the market size is fit for one office alone. But there isn't any much plans to open new offices at the moment. We hope that business growth on the continent will continue, and then later on we will look at, you know, exciting opportunities in Lagos and other key cities.
Well, absolutely. After speaking with me on Channels Business Global, I'm sure those phone calls will come rushing in. Jean Neng, Regional Director for Western Central Africa at Enterprise Singapore. Thanks so much for joining me on the show.
Thank you, Juliana.
Thank you. Africa Teen Geeks, with financial support from UNICEF, are launching a groundbreaking initiative to help close the digital education gap in South Africa. 2,000 teachers from 1,200 schools will be trained to help improve the lives of 1.2 million school children. Lindaway Matlali, the CEO of the firm, joins me now from Johannesburg. Lindaway, please tell us how this groundbreaking, life-changing initiative with UNICEF became a reality.
We actually met the executive director of UNICEF when we were both speaking at the World Economic Forum event, and she, you know, reached out and said, you know, are we working together? And I said, no, we weren't. And basically that's how the conversation started with the South African office, you know, leading to where we are right now, which I'm really excited about. That started actually almost a year. That was last year, September, when we spoke at the event with Henrietta Fore.
I was going to say that a huge part of your programme is about training teachers. It's been a massive issue. Do you think kind of the skills gap in the continent as it pertains to teachers was exposed during the pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say it was necessarily exposed. It was always there. If you look at the OECD report, as well as the UNESCO report on education, you know, this has been mentioned every year that we don't have qualified teachers in terms of the quality of education in Africa. You know, you could just, every year when the report comes, you could just change the dates into, you know, to 40 years ago, is the same issues that are still there. And for us was really to look at, you know, I think what the pandemic forecast actually exposed more was how huge the digital divide was, which we already knew. But then most importantly, to look at how we can now help the teachers to be able to upskill them using technology. I mean, in the South African context, we're talking about teachers who were not that qualified because of apartheid, the education they got themselves. So this has been really important in terms of making sure that we can support them to provide the quality education that every child deserves.
Absolutely. We're running out of time, but please tell us about some of the milestones you hope to achieve by the end of the year. I know you had a big event last year. You're always busy, Lindaway, and it's such a groundbreaking partnership.
No, thank you so much. By the way, basically by the end of this year, we're hoping to have trained 10,000 teachers, and next year we would be, we'll be implementing the program in schools, because the teachers would have gotten the skills and all the support and the books that we've already done. So we're really excited about that, and our vision is also to take all the work that we are doing in South Africa and make it available to African countries as well at no cost.
Well, Lindway Matlale, CEO of African Teen Geeks, thank you so much for joining me on Channel's Business Global. Thank you, Lindway. Sadly, that's all we have time for today, but do get in touch with your comments and suggestions. I'll see you at the same time next week for more in-depth business analysis on Channel's Business Global. Goodbye.